Good morning and welcome to your Hillsborough County MPO meeting. Will everyone please rise for the pledge and invocation? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our gracious and heavenly Father, we are so thankful that you allow us to come together today to see another one of your beautiful days and take care of the business of this county. We ask that you be with us this morning, regulate our minds and humble our hearts as we make decisions, discussions to make this county a better place for all of us to live, work, and play. We ask that you be with those that put their lives on the line for us each and every day, our military, our first responders. Ask that at the end of the day that you take them back to their homes to find everything safe and sound. When our work is done here today, Father, we ask that you be with us throughout the day and take us back to our homes and find everything in order. These are all blessed we ask in your righteous and holy name. Amen. All right. I have let me approve the minutes first. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 5th?
So moved.
There's a motion by Commissioner Murman, second by Councilman Maniscalco to approve the September 5th minutes. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, let them know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. Motion is adopted. We have one memo from Councilman Viera. Says, can you please read into the record that I will not be able to attend the monthly meeting due to a conflict. So we want to read that into the record. Public comment. Each person will have 3 minutes for public comment this morning. I have some speaker cards, so please, our timer is not here. The timer is here, okay. So remember, you have 3 minutes to address the body. The first person is Gary Cloud.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Board members, Gary Cloyd, Transit Advocate. So in the next 40 days, Hillsborough County will have 3 transit initiatives. And after Thanksgiving, there are a couple elected officials that will be going to a conference up in Washington, D.C. You are already on the FTA's radar. We very much appreciate your advocacy as these projects move forward and move people throughout the county to include that West Shore action plan that's on the agenda today. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Davison.
Reporting morning, members, Jim Davison. On your packet there I handed out, you have the response from MPO staff concerning the presentation I made last month. I had to put in the numbers. All they had was percentages and a pie. If you look through it, you will find out that the pies are not equal in size. Staff never addressed the statements I've made. They never addressed it taking the unallocated funds and putting them into transit, making the cities and the county and the roads susceptible to any cost overruns or drop in revenues. I'm not going to dignify that presentation with any further. It was pretty poor. The second packet I have contains the capacity and congestion relief that any plan, including the 2045 plan, the 2040 plan, and the 2035 plan. You have this in your packet. If you open it up to the page, it gives you the funding scenarios. On the next page, it gives you the results of the studies done by you on CO2 emissions and congestion relief. You will see that the CO2 emissions, despite a 1-cent sales tax, increases by 41% from today. Congestion increases, and there's almost no difference between a 1-cent rail tax and the no sales tax in CAA 17. Lastly, I want to show you the 2040 response in this one, and I want to read as a quote for the people at home. Quote, state of the system, MPO, 2040 plan. It is estimated that without building any road projects or implementing more efficient transit service, the level of vehicle delay would increase to 1,585 by 2035. If the adopted 2035 plan were followed, that figure would be 1,200, or 4 times today's congestion. how can you say that you're going to get this guy home to dinner on time? You're not. You're lying to him. They are lying to the people of Hillsborough County. And they're doing it because you had the same thing in your 2035 plan. You not only said you were going to get him to dinner, you said the asthmatics were going to breathe easier. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Charlotte Greenberg.
Those are your numbers.
Charlotte Greenberg, I live in Lutz. Just a few facts. The MPO's 2045 push-pull survey ignored new road capacity and proposes tearing down an interstate and includes rail, and more rail. Is it ethical for the MPO to be handing out freebies, including free Lightning tickets, when the Lightning are owned by the very person associated with funding the rail tax on the ballot? The rail tax on the ballot cannot be funded the 2040 LRTP because the rail tax excludes any dedicated funding for new road capacity. Therefore, the MPO should be distancing itself from the rail tax, not making public presentations such as Director Beth Alden did by making presumptions that the MPO's outdated four-year plan was being funded by the rail tax and that long-range transportation plans were never intended to be implementation plans. The tax is just a scam to get rail to the stadium. Channel 13 revealed it at the Rays press conference. Quote, taking them out to the ballpark, the team acknowledges, will require a rail line from the east. The days of a ballpark where everybody drives their car to the ballpark, that's kind of 5 years ago, one team official noted. It's October 2nd, and it's about 9:07 in the morning. And I'm telling you that if the voters are fooled into passing this tax, they will see a basket full of empty promises that never happen because rail eats up all the money, and you'll be coming back again for more because you don't have enough for operating expenses. Just another Metro fail, just another white elephant. And will anyone who disagrees with your scheme be accused of being delusional, as we heard during the no-go Hillsborough? And if you think I'm kidding, this is Metro Rail, how a magnificent idea became a white elephant from Dade County. I lived through it. It was the same basket of promises, the same MO to sell the tax. And the voters bought the tax. And John Dorchner called it Metro Fail. Welcome to Dade County's billion-dollar rapid transit system. It's fast, it's clean, it's virtually crime-free. There's just one little problem. It's bleeding the taxpayers, bleeding the operating budget, and it never stops. This plan should never happen, and if this tax should pass, mark my word, this day, October 2nd, this is what will happen in Hillsborough County.
Thank you. Sharon Calvert.
I'm Sharon Calvert, and I'm with Fix Our Roads First. It's been touted and reported in the media numerous times that the 1% transit tax hike, this 5 pages, funds the 2040 LRTP. I believe you as board members know that it does not. It can't even be compared. Nothing in the tax ballot language provides any, zero, dedicated funding for new road capacity. The tax does not include new technology that is being required by both state and federal transportation agencies. It's outdated. On August 23rd, MPO Director Beth Alden presented to the Tampa City Council the LRTP, and she merged in the transit tax hike. But misleading information was presented, and wrong information was presented. I don't know who authorized that presentation, but anyone watching it or listening to it would presume that the tax hike is funding projects in the LRTP. There is not one project listed in this 5 pages of regulations. And the only reference to the MPO is that it hands 1% of the $160 million over 30 years to the MPO, when the LRTP stated the MPO only needed $16 million over 20 years. It's not the role of the MPO to go sell the transit tax hike. Tampa City Council or whoever needs to invite whoever put it on the ballot to say what it's funding. You need a remedy to this problem. This organization needs to clearly state that as an organization, the transit tax hike is not funding the outdated 4-year-old 2040 LRTP. And in addition, the 2045 survey is rigged and biased, and it is a total deviation from previous plans. And that needs a remedy too. And I hope that you will do something to remedy these situations, because the MPO needs to be credible to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Josephine Amato?
Good morning. Do I say my name and address here?
No, just.
Okay. My name is Josephine Amato. I run Safe Bus for Us, which is an advocacy group in Hillsborough County dedicated for data-driven, evidence-driven, safe paths to school for our students in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County has the second highest pedestrian death rate in our country. It has the highest pedestrian death rate per capita in the state of Florida. We're beating Miami-Dade County and killing our children on their way to school. And I'm going to give you some stats a lot of people may not know. The American school bus is 7,000% safer than any other mode of travel to school. What does that mean? When you put your child in a car seat, they are 70% safer in a motor vehicle crash from getting killed. If you put them on a school bus, they're 7,000% safer. It is a life-saving intervention for our children. It is also one of the largest forms of mass transportation in Hillsborough County. Now, I was very lucky to be supported to be part of the Student Transportation Working Group Committee. At present, our Hillsborough County School District is eliminating safe school bus transportation to school. And to tell you the numbers, we lose approximately 6,000 children walking, biking, and driving to school. The #1 killer of our teens in America is motor vehicle crashes. 6,000 children versus the 8 passenger lives we lose nationally on the American school bus. 8 lives lost versus 6,000 lives lost. The data is screaming at us that the American school bus saves our kids. Now, if we think about the summer, I kind of laughed at this because I'm in East Hillsborough. I'm in Lithia. Door to door, no traffic. It'll take me 35 minutes to park, get out of my car, come up here. Today, 2 hours. Normally in the summer, all of us can think and dream about the no traffic. As soon as school starts, we put another 200,000 cars on our roads, on our overcapacity roads, on our poorly planned school car lines. If every school bus eliminates 77 cars, it also eliminates emissions. It costs us $1,121 to transport one child to school. When we create comprehensive plans, we need to create comprehensive plans that includes all of our mass transportation. Our school district transportation, all of our school bus drivers know every street throughout this county. During states of emergency, it's our largest transportation for evacuation. It is an investment. We should start considering MOUs to maintain our American school buses, and we should hold our school district accountable for all the hazardous walking conditions that our children are being subjected to, walking on roadways, walking on railroad tracks, and walking in drainage ditches, which is part of our statute. And the county needs to help with that instead of supporting eliminating school buses for our children. And I quite frankly don't know how many of our children have to die before we start taking action.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
That's the last speaker's card I have. Does anyone else wish to address the board? Anyone else? Thank you. Committee reports, online comments. Ms. Torres.
Good morning, Gina Torres, MPO staff. This is very brief. The committee's approved and forwarded to you all the TIP amendment for the streetcar grant for free fares. The policy committee did recommend that HART address how they're going to promote the free fare program. The committees also approved the TIP amendment for performance targets. A couple of the committees commented that they hope when the targets are reassessed in a couple of years that they'll be more aspirational with some definitive plans on how to reach those targets. The West Shore Transportation Plan that's on your consent agenda was actually supported at the last, in the August committee meetings, so they supported that. There was a lot of other reports that the committees heard, the Tampa Bay Next. There were questions about better illustrations and potential right-of-way impacts, types of trees that are going to be used in landscaping, and how the 275 Boulevard concepts fit into TB Next. There was a tri-county travel market analysis. Vision Zero and Nebraska Avenue were presented. The MPO's Attorney Cameron did speak to the policy committee in response to questions about providing donated prizes for a drawing for survey responses, and he noted several examples of other public agencies in Florida that have done those same things. The T-BAR to MPO's Chairs Coordinating Committee staff directors discussed the performance target setting process that's underway at all the MPOs. And once all the MPOs have met the requirements, a coordinated regional target setting discussion can then occur. The group also made plans for the December 14th meeting of the chairs and discussed the MPO Advisory Council position against transportation earmarks. That was it for your committee reports. As far as the online comments, there were no Facebook comments to today's meeting. There were four or five emails. A response was given to Mauricio Rosas, who was concerned over locating IKEA, but he was referring to other companies that offer good jobs and careers, and that this should be done in coordination with mass transit. And Ms. Alden explained potential job growth as described in the Freight Logistics Zone Strategic Plan. She pointed him to that. There were several email exchanges between Ms. Calvert and Mr. Davison, which they've really discussed the same topic that they emailed about. Brian Weinstein emailed DOT and copied the MPO, just requesting relief along Gibsonton Drive at the I-75 North ramp. He was looking for a signal and maybe some signal coordination, and DOT was responding to that. And last, Robert Sawalish wrote that the BOCC approved a traffic signal at the VA hospital entrance off of Bruce B. Downs, and he encouraged it to remain a high priority. He was sending his support for that. So those were your online comments.
Any questions? Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Torres. We have two items on the consent agenda, committee appointments of West Shore Transportation Action Plans. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Councilman Maniscalco to approve the consent agenda. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. Motion is adopted. We need a roll call vote on the TIP amendment for Florida Department of Transportation grant for streetcar free fares. I think this was taken up by the policy committee and passed out and brought to us for approval. Is there any discussion on this particular item? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the item.
So moved.
There's a motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Councilman Cohen to approve the TIP amendment for Florida Department of Transportation grant for streetcar free fares. Roll call vote.
Morning.
Morning.
Room for Anderson.
Yes.
Kemp. Manick.
Yes.
Gerardo. Yes. Cohen.
Yes.
Trent Green.
Yes.
Hagan. Milano. Lott.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Viera. Norman.
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Stewart. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Action items. TIP amendment. Mr. Wong.
Good morning, MPO board members. My name is Johnny Wong, MPO staff, and I am here to figure out how to use the computer. Got it. So I'm here to brief you on a TIP amendment that requires MPOs and DOTs to establish performance targets for 3 rules. The first is transit asset management, the second is pavement and bridge condition, and the third is related to system performance. All 3 of these rules originate from MAP 21 and the FAST Act. These legislative acts relate to ensuring government accountability. They push for performance-based planning, and the rules prescribe specific performance measures that DOTs and MPOs must keep track of so that we can establish a benchmark or a baseline to see how we're performing in these 3 areas, and then monitor progress as we continue to program funding for specific projects. The rule, again, requires us to set targets that are achievable and data-driven so that we can establish a reasonable and realistic benchmark. I'll caution you ahead of time that this presentation is a little bit long. My apologies, but I've separated it into 3 sections so that we can keep track of everything a little bit better. So the first rule and section that we're going to deal with is transit asset management. And transit asset management, or TAM, is a process of creating an inventory of transit assets, assessing the condition of each, and then establishing a process to fund maintenance of assets at the appropriate time. The idea being here that we create some efficiencies when we're funding maintenance not too soon and not too late so that the assets remain in a state of good repair and don't fall into poor condition. So under this rule, which applies to all transit agencies that receive federal funding, the transit agencies are required to inventory the capital assets valued at more than $50,000 and then break them out into 4 categories. The first category is rolling stock. These are the passenger vehicles, and the others are equipment, facilities, and infrastructure. The transit agencies then have to rate the condition of those assets and create that method for prioritizing investments at the right time, and then set performance targets alongside DOTs and the MPOs. And the performance targets relate to the percent of each asset category that is not in a state of good repair. That's a little bit confusing, but I'll try to let you know when that becomes important. So under this rule, MPOs are required to coordinate asset condition targets with the providers and DOTs once every 4 years, and then report these targets in our TIPs and LRTPs. At the midpoint, which will be approximately 2021, we have the option to reevaluate the targets, determine if significant progress is being made toward achieving them, and then update them as necessary. HART recently completed its TAM plan, but rather than rating assets that are valued at $50,000 or more, they were actually a little bit more inclusive and rated assets that are $10,000 or more. So this is a little bit expanded beyond what the Federal Transit Administration is requesting. Of the $226 million in assets that HART owns, $163 million were inventoried, and the bar chart on the left is showing the asset value of each category. The numbers circled in red are showing the dollar value of each asset category that is in a state of good repair. So this is the percent of the asset value that are in good condition currently. But a couple nuances to the HART TAM plan are that they were not able to include the heavy maintenance facility because that's scheduled to be replaced in 2019, so they didn't feel it was appropriate to include it in a current TAM plan. And it also doesn't include IT hardware and software. Oh, one other thing to mention. So of the total assets that were inventoried, about 74% of them are in good condition, and this is exactly in line with the industry standard. The little chart at the bottom shows that average industry standard is that assets are in a good condition between 60 to 90% of the time, so 75 is like the exact midpoint. For MPOs, we're required to set targets for a slightly different measure. We're required to report the total percent of assets in each category that are not in a state of good repair. So what we're looking for here are lower numbers. A lower number of assets not in a state of good repair would indicate better condition. And so from the TAM plan, we have discovered that of HART's rolling stock assets, 28% are not in a state of good repair. Of the equipment assets, 81% are not in a state of good repair. Of the passenger and parking facilities, 10% rate below 3 on a term scale, which is an FTA tool that's provided to them to rate the condition of facilities like admin and maintenance buildings, passenger parking facilities, bus stops, bus stations. 0% of the admin and maintenance facilities rate below 3 on the term scale. And HART actually is not required to report the performance of track segments, but we reached out proactively to City of Tampa, and they told us that 0% of the streetcar tracks have performance restrictions. So the target for infrastructure is 0%. Sunshine Line is another transit provider in the county. They offer services for the transportation disadvantaged. They're not required to report asset condition under this rule because they don't receive federal funding, but just to give you a big picture, holistic view of what's going on in the county with respect to transit, we asked them to provide us some data, and as of 2018, the Sunshine Line owns 60 passenger vehicles, and they also use the same standards that the TAM plan has, and found that 35% of those vehicles are currently not in a state of good repair, but their aspirational target for the future is to bring that number to below 25%. Not in a state of good repair. The MPO is, of course, working with HART as our agency partners to improve assets, And so every year we prioritize about $4 million in grant funds for replacement of buses and other passenger vehicles. This amounts to about a quarter of our total surface transportation program funds. We're also working with Hart Leadership to prioritize about $10 million to upgrade the automated dispatch system. And this is just a recap of the proposed targets. I'll go over them a little bit at the end, and they're also in your packet so that you can follow along. The second performance rule that we're dealing with is pavement and bridge condition. Under this rule, DOTs and MPOs are required to set 4-year targets for pavement and bridge condition on the national highway system, both interstate and non-interstate. We have to coordinate these targets and then report them in our TIPs and LRTPs. This is the schedule for coordinating those targets. 2022 will mark the end of the first or initial performance period. At the midpoint, sometime around 2021, we'll have a 2-year check-in and determine if we're making progress toward achieving those targets, at which time we have the option to update the targets if necessary. In May of this year, DOT declared its statewide pavement and bridge condition targets, and they're shown in the column to the right. On the interstate, the statewide target is to have 60% or more of pavement in good condition and 5% in poor condition. On the non-interstate NHS, the target is to have greater than 40% in good condition and less than 5% in poor. And for the National Highway System bridges, the target is to have greater than 50% in good condition and less than 10% in poor condition. Up until the time of this presentation, I was unable to get raw pavement data from FDOT. They're actually working on ensuring consistency with District 7, but we are proposing that we adopt the statewide target for interstate pavement of greater than 60 in good condition and less than 5% in poor condition, and for the non-interstate to adopt the statewide target of greater than 40% in good condition and less than 5% in poor condition. We're also proposing to support the statewide target for bridge condition of greater than 50% in good and less than 10% in poor. And the reason for this is that we have slightly more than 700 bridges in the county. 462 of them are inventoried for this rule. And of those 462, 405 of the bridges, or 78%, are in good condition and 0% are in poor. So we're far exceeding the statewide standard at the moment. And also, we think that the proposal makes sense because FDOT has already committed funding in its work program to maintain the condition of pavement and bridge. So the third rule is system performance. And system performance under this rule is measured in terms of travel time reliability. There are some unique definitions for these, and I'll go over them in a few slides. But travel time reliability assesses the dependability of your commute to and from work. It's measured day to day across different times of the day, and it's really valuable for assessing not the everyday congestion that we expect, but the effects of non-recurring congestion which can arise from crashes and weather events. So this is the way to interpret reliability. A high reliability means that your travel time is relatively consistent over a certain period of time. Let's say that your commute to work averages about 40 minutes every day. Some days it takes you 35, some days it takes 45. But you know that every day you're going to have a plus minus of only 5 minutes. On the other hand, low reliability would mean that your commute to work averages about 40 minutes, but when you get in the car, you don't know if it's going to take you 20 or 60. That would be a symptom of low reliability. And low reliability is typically attributable to bottlenecks, traffic incidents like crashes, work zones, poor weather. Under this rule, MPOs and DOTs are required to coordinate to establish targets for percent of interstate and non-interstate NHS providing for reliable travel times, and 4-year targets for interstate truck travel time reliability index. They made this so difficult to pronounce. And then we have to report those 4-year targets in our TIPs and LRTPs. The schedule for setting performance targets for system performance is the exact same as pavement and bridge. 2022 will mark the end of the initial performance period, and 2021 will be the midpoint. Again, we have the option to review if we're making progress toward that target and then update if necessary. In May of this year, DOT declared its statewide travel time reliability targets as follows. The red dots relate to the level of travel time reliability, and under these statewide targets, reliability on the interstate should be greater than 75% of the network having a level of travel time reliability less than 1.5. And what that 1.5 indicates is that on days of moderate congestion, if your commute to work takes 20 minutes, anything greater than 30 minutes on a moderately congested day would not be reliable. And for the truck travel time reliability index, this is measured on an index score from 0 to 2, and this indicates that for trucks, if the commute to an economic center takes on average 30 minutes, a value of 2 would mean that on days of high congestion, it would take 60 minutes. So it basically assesses whether it is doubled or less. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope so. I said that a little bit weird. Let me know if you have any questions.
No, I was glancing.
All right, and so we collected 6 years of data related to travel time reliability on the interstates within Hillsborough County. We plotted them out using a linear projection, and at the end of the baseline performance period, we are expected to have reliability of 60%. So by 2022, we will be failing to meet the statewide target of 75% reliability on the interstates. Therefore, we are proposing to not support the statewide target, but to create our own separate quantifiable and data-driven target of 60% reliability on the interstates. The reason why is because we are already not meeting that target. We're trending downward pretty rapidly. There are projects programmed in the TIP and work program, but they're not going to be able to come online until after that initial performance period is already over. We collected several years of data for interstate freight travel time reliability. This is that indexed value of 2, and we plotted it out using the same linear projection. We are currently not meeting the statewide standard, and through the end of the initial performance period, we will continue to not meet that standard. Whereas the statewide target is 2.00, we are projected to be at 2.07. So we are proposing this as the initial performance period target, 2.07, because we are, again, not meeting that target. We're trending downward, and those program projects won't be able to make truck travel time more reliable until after the performance period is over. There are a number of things that can be done to address reliability on the highway system. I'm not going to steal the presenter's thunder, but Ron Chin from FDOT District 7 Operations Center will be giving you a presentation on some operational improvements which can be done to facilitate greater reliability. So moving on, the final performance measure for this rule is non-interstate NHS travel time reliability. We used the same approach, although this was a very limited data set. It didn't cover the entire non-interstate network, and we only had 4 years worth of reliable data. But we used the same method to project it out, and by the end of the performance period, we're expecting to have 30% of the non-interstate NHS system reliable. And so we are proposing that to be our target as well. And so to recap, the transit asset management targets that we're proposing are on the screen in front of you and also in your packet. They are 28% of rolling stock not in a state of good repair, 81% of equipment not in a state of good repair, 10% of passenger parking facilities not in a state of good repair, 0% of admin facilities rated below 3 on the term scale, and 0% of infrastructure with performance restrictions. For pavement and bridge condition, we are proposing to adopt the statewide targets of greater than 50% of NHS bridges in good condition and less than 10 in poor. And for pavement condition, we are suggesting a target of greater than 60% on the interstate in good condition, less than 5 in poor condition, and on the non-interstate, greater than 40% in good condition, less than 5 in poor. And for system performance, we are proposing to adopt our own targets, and they are 60% of the interstate meeting the standards for reliability on the interstate NHS network, a truck travel time reliability index value of 2.07, and on the non-interstate, a target of 30%. Woo, made it through. Sorry for all the tongue ties.
Thank you. Are
And
there any
so I'll be
questions?
happy to answer any questions.
Majorado.
I have a couple questions and perhaps one request. Under asset management, Mr. Wong, you said that IT is not covered, and my question would be, so how is this going to impact future justification for system upgrades and things? And I noted that one of your investments that you noted was automated dispatch at $10 million, and just knowing the cost and investment in IT, it's somewhat of a concern to me that it's not included under asset management.
Right. I'm not an expert on the transit side of things, but I've invited Cindy
Oh, okay.
Zambella from HART to speak to you.
Hi, good morning. Cindy Zambella. I'm the Director of Budget and Grants and Fixed Assets. So I would make one clarification. While the targets that were set did not include for FTA purposes, did not include under equipment IT, we did assess IT. In our measurements and in our evaluations of our assets, our condition and inventory, we did include our IT, both hardware and software. So when FTA set these guidelines, they only limited equipment to non-revenue vehicles. Not really sure what the rationale was behind that, but we did evaluate those for our purposes. And, well, let me add one other thing, because CAD AVL, that was excluded from the evaluation because we knew that was an imminent need. MPO had already programmed the $10 million for us for our surface transportation funding. So that, again, was not included in the TAM plan, but we have an aggressive plan to replace our CAD AVL system in the upcoming year.
Thanks, Cindy.
My second question was, under pavement and bridges, if we're exceeding the goal of safe bridges right now and we're standing at 78%, why are we setting a goal at 40% if we either, and the statement was made, we've made a commitment to maintain, and so I'd be comfortable with maintaining or even continuous improvement, but to say we're at 78%, our goal's 40%, makes it look like bodies could say, we can let it slide.
Right. So the logic behind supporting the statewide target, the reason why the state set the target conservatively is because these performance measures are kind of new to us. We're not well positioned to see how specific investments will improve the condition in such a small geographic scope. When they do these pavement when they do the pavement conditional evaluations, they're looking at a large swath of pavement, and they have to use the best tools available to them to determine how one project of resurfacing on a specific street will affect the entire network. I think that as a result of projects that have been programmed in the past, the pavement condition is in a good condition currently. But to project that forward, we're not entirely sure of what the implications will be. Does that make sense?
It does not to me. I don't feel comfortable if we're at a 78% metric, lowering our goal to 40%. I'm sure there's something I'm not understanding, but I don't feel comfortable with that metric.
Mayor Lott, were you done?
Well, you're heading exactly where I was heading, is that I been here on this board a long time, and I always find it amazing when we set goals that are less than 100%. And I'm sure it comes down to funding and so forth, but to take any projects backwards, to me, I just don't, we're setting a goal lower than what the current expectations are. It doesn't make sense to me at all. But it also doesn't make sense to me when we're setting goals that are less than 100% as well. So more of a statement than a question, but you answered the question.
And then I did have one request, and then I'll hush, Chairman. And on the system performance, on reliability, and the state metric was 75%, and we're shooting for 60%. And I understand it's in part based on our current state of conditions. But I guess my request would be, how can that metrics stay in front of this body, knowing how critical reliability is to us retaining businesses, recruiting businesses, and being able to assure that goods can get from point A to point B. That one is grievous to, I think, everyone around this table. That how are we going to aggressively pursue and measure and monitor and keep that reliability directly in front of us?
Right. So maybe this will address the question you asked me earlier as well. So the performance targets that we have set now, the performance is largely the result of projects that have been programmed in the past. Over the initial performance period, this next 4 years, we're going to be working to program projects that will make significant impacts in each of those respective areas. So I think that at the end of this initial performance period, where we're really setting a benchmark of here's where we stand, when we get to a point where we're programming projects to improve those elements, we're going to get more ambitious as time goes on. This is really just an assessment of where we're at today.
This is based on decisions that were made 5 years ago. basically.
Correct.
That makes more sense.
Mr. Alden?
Just to add to what Dr. Wong was saying, the federal regulations are that the investments that are in our 5-year transportation improvement program need to be able to demonstrate that we're making progress towards the targets that we set. So right now, since we have already committed funding to a number of projects that are in the TIP, if we wanted to change what those performance outcomes are going to be, we would have to shift dollars around, potentially decommit funding that has already been allocated for other projects. So what we need to be doing at this point, what the feds are setting us up for, is to create an ongoing performance-based planning process. And this is the beginning of that. So this is where we're saying we've got room for improvement. And when we come back with our update of our transportation improvement program and our list of priorities and where we want to focus our resources and all of our subsequent updates, that's where we have the opportunity to move the needle on some of these performance targets. So it's a beginning, not an end. And we'll also be bringing this back as part of our long-range transportation plan development. That is a required part of our long-range plan development too in the new federal rules.
Were you done, Mayor?
I apologize.
All right.
So we would need to decommit funding if we shift. If we are right now performing at 78% and we've set a goal at 40%, are you telling me that, so basically we are going to have to decommit funding, so are you telling me that we've taken all funding away from bridges? Because it's almost like we're setting a goal to decrease by 38%, and the only way we can shift that number up to something reasonable, like let's maintain, is we're going to have to decommit funding. So I really don't understand.
We were not pushing the needle or trying to set a more ambitious target for the bridge condition. I'm kind of looking at our district secretary right now about whether the department would have any concerns about us establishing a stronger target for bridge condition in Hillsborough County. Seeing as we're already at that performance level, I don't see any reason not to.
Secretary, come to the microphone, please. Morning.
Are you referring more to the ones that are off-system?
So of the bridges that are on the national highway system, those are the ones that were rated. They are rated on a statewide basis, and that's where we have the proposed target from Florida DOT, of looking at all of the bridges statewide. In our county, we are far exceeding the statewide performance. So the only question in my mind would be, would District 7 have any concerns about us reflecting the higher performance for bridge condition here in Hillsborough County?
I'd have to, are you referring to bridges that are on our system or
on the national highway system?
Yeah.
That's right, yes.
I'd have to check with our bridge maintenance folks, but as long as we meet the standards that we have, we're okay. I don't know how this would impact if you're going below our current standard or what you're proposing, to be honest. are you looking to lower, below our standards that we have to meet for the Florida Transportation Plan?
I think the proposal would be to set a higher standard that more closely reflects the current good condition of the bridges in Hillsborough County on the National Highway System.
I'd have to check, because most of that's handled through our central office, setting the standards. They're statewide, they're not individual districts out there. So maybe if we were to get together, you show me more detail, I can see whether, that's acceptable. But typically, we try, we set them at the state level. For the Florida Transportation Commission has metrics we meet, and we report each year on the metrics. For one of them is bridge condition. So, yeah.
We do have an opportunity to come back 2 years from now and reassess where we are with respect to the targets that have been set and make adjustments. So this is certainly not the last time we're going to be talking about this, and we can do additional coordination with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, for the ones that we're responsible for inspecting and maintaining and all that, those are statewide goals, and I don't think they would want to change them for one district or, one part of one district.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Gerardo, were you done? Mayor?
David Gwynn, FDOT.
Were you done? Mayor Lott, were you done? Mr. Wagner, you recognize.
So one of my questions, I think, has been answered. Did you coordinate this with FDOT, all this analysis? Doesn't sound like it, since that it doesn't sound like the coordination has been thorough enough if I've got this kind of question going on. I have a problem where you take your performance measures and you lower them, and it's only for roadways that you have a performance measure, not for transit, correct? You have condition and performance for transit, for highway. I do not understand why you lower the mark for highway performance measures just because that's where we are. It ought to be the goal you're trying to reach, and if you get new funds, then you go there. It sounds like you said, well, we've allocated the funds we have and we're going to be at 40, so let's set the mark at 40. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. No way I look at that doesn't make sense to me. It would be like saying taking your condition rating and lowering them to the current mark because that's where you are. I don't see why you take one and do it that way and you take another and just leave it alone as an aspirational goal. Okay, so National Highway System. Are all the roads that you're talking about, National Highway System, owned by Florida DOT?
Not entirely sure, are they?
They are not. So I would like to know what portion of that NHS roadway system, is owned by TIA, what the DOT, what their condition rating is, and what the others are. That becomes an important thing, especially when you're talking about you're going to use this to allocate funds. I'd like to know what funds are you going to allocate? What funds do these measures guide us toward allocating? I don't have any of that information. I wouldn't vote to adopt these measures based on the questions I have right now. Thank you.
Councilman Cohen, you recognize.
I want to thank you all for the, particularly you, Mayor, for the questions that you asked, because they were exactly what I was thinking. I'm very troubled by any idea of aspiring to doing worse than we're doing now in any category, but particularly, how can you aspire to have 5% of your bridges in poor condition? Are you saying that 1 out of every 20 people that goes over a bridge is somehow at risk, and that's acceptable? When we adopted Vision Zero, there was some snickering about the idea that it was ridiculous to aspire to have 0 fatalities. But if it's aspirational, you should aspire to 0, because then any one is too many. And so I just want to say that I would need to understand exactly what funding difference it's going to make to Hillsborough County to adopt these standards. If you were to say, if you adopt this, X is going to happen, and if you don't adopt it, you're going to lose all of these dollars, that would help persuade me. But otherwise, I don't understand why you would ever aspire to something that on its face is not where we want to be.
Right. There are no penalties for failing to meet the targets that we set. I think that, again, the purpose of setting the target based on what the current condition is just to set the bar and establish where we are so that we can track progress in the future. Said that a couple times, but really that's my only response to you.
Okay, I mean, I think if we know we're at 78%, targeting 50 or 40 or whatever, it seems to me we're opening ourselves up for someone coming in and saying you're not getting the funding for what you need because you're already 28 points ahead of what your what the standard is. So,
I have at least two more people want to speak, and I'm gonna get back to you. But Madam Director, I've been in this business a long time, and I count votes. We may need to push this back to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Because I'm counting votes. It doesn't look good. Okay? Mr. Mechanic, you recognize.
I have two comments, one of which is similar to Mr. Cohen, and I may be speaking as a lawyer here, but I really would want to understand whether it's FTA or FHWA, if there's some consequence to failing to meet a standard that we've set for ourselves. In fact, I'm a little puzzled by the idea that we can just set our own standards too. So I'd really like to understand what the legal framework is on this before we vote on this item. The other comment I would make is it seems to me that there were some red flags in there that we need to be, if this is going to be useful, we need to have it plugged into our future decision-making. And one that jumped out at me, the reliability on truck traffic we decided to set at, or the proposal is to set that at 2.7, sounds like a horrific goal. I mean, from the port standpoint, I would think you'd be very concerned about truck traffic being more than double the expectation of reliability. Seems like not an acceptable thing. So I'd want to see that as a, quote, red flag item in terms of our future allocation of funding to make sure that we don't forget that those are what I'm calling red flag items that we would want to maybe advance on the priority list. So.
Before I call on anyone else, I've just told the executive director, we're going to postpone this today, bring it back at our next meeting, and I'm going to ask you and Mr. Dr. Wong and the secretary to send out an email to all the board members here and get their, if you didn't get them all today, get their concerns and questions so they can be answered and bring this back to the next meeting. Okay? So, Commissioner White, you recognize.
Yeah, I was in the queue to make a motion to defer, but since that's been agreed upon, I have no further comments.
Okay, Mayor Lott?
Am I understanding what you're saying, because I think it just clicked maybe for me, because you said it 3 or 4 times now, is that you're not setting these as really a bar based on the current decisions and the funding that was made 5 years ago, this is where we're going to be at.
Correct.
Okay, so we're not trying to be there, we're already there based on decisions that were made in the past. Is that correct?
Correct.
So since that's where we're going, now the decision is how do we get back up to a proper, so is that what's really happening here? Is that
right?
So it's not that we're trying to get to 40, we're already going to 40 based on decisions that have been made in the past.
That's right.
Okay.
If we elect to do nothing, this is where we will end up at the end of the initial performance period, taking into account that these are goals that not the number goals, but the goals to improve system performance, to maintain pavement and bridge, and maintain our assets. With those concepts in mind, I'm sure that the board and the committees will elect to program projects that make a positive impact on those. And we'll see the effects of those throughout the second performance period.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. This is a little bit different than other people have been hitting on, and I know I had the same questions and had Ms. Alden make the explanation about how that worked. That being said, one of my concerns that wasn't in there, and I understand kind of how, when you explained it, why it isn't, but I still want to bring it forward because I think it's really important. Transit, of course. The Operations Center for HART needs to be, the Operations Center for HART needs to have a $40 million redo, update, actually taking it down and rebuilding it on the same spot. And I think that there's nothing more important in terms of moving people in transit in our entire region than that operations center being up to date and being able to, we're talking about keeping par with our operations now. So I'll just say that, and I just wanted to put that on the list and in the.
Okay. Mr. Wagner, you recognize.
I truly don't understand how you set a goal based on where you're going to be, knowing that it's below the standard. So just because that's where you're going to be, it speaks to the fact that you need to do more.
Speak in your microphone.
I'm sorry. I don't understand the idea of setting a goal based on where you're going to be because you failed to either come up with the funds or make the right decisions. So you're going to be failing, so let's set the goal at failing. How does that in any way promote you to make better decisions down the road to get to the goal, which is 60%? Somebody's going to have a hard time explaining that to me before the next meeting. Thank you.
All right. Staff we're taking this back, deferring it to the next meeting. Staff will send an email out to members of the board. If you didn't get all the concerns, getting their concerns, getting answers to those concerns, and bring it back to the next meeting. We're not going to bring this up today because it will fail miserably if I'm counting votes right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
With the monumental task that's ahead of staff, could you be prepared by the next meeting for this?
Well, we'll bring something back. This MPO, honestly, we have been working the performance-based planning process since before the federal rules were even drafted. And we were working in partnership with DOT's central office. It isn't the district offices that are in charge of the performance-based planning process for the DOT. It is central office, and they have for years had a coordinated program of working with the MPOs, coming up with what are the data, trying to slice and dice it to look at it. What is it statewide? What is it in each region? What is it in urban areas versus more rural areas? And bringing that back for us all to digest. This MPO was one of the 4 pilots working with the DOT to look at those data sets. So we've had a good idea of what it means. We have been bringing that back as part of our long-range transportation plan, which is why this board in the Imagine 2040 plan adopted a program that has system preservation up at the top of the priority list, and then safety and crash reduction, and then congestion management, which speaks to the travel time reliability. And we've been very strategic about that. What I'm telling you is that the financial scenarios in our long-range plan show that we do not make a lot of progress on those performance targets at our existing spending levels. We have a lot of deficiencies in all of those spending categories. Now, there are ways that we can address better performance, but the funding that we have right now programmed in the TIP does not get us there. We can be Pollyanna, we can put in targets that are hopeful into our TIP, and there will not be any ramifications as far as we can tell under the federal regulations. But is it honest? I'm not sure about that.
Ms. Alden, I don't think anyone on this board is questioning the work that you've done with all of the agencies throughout the state and this county. That's not the question. The board members are uncomfortable at this particular point in time, and they have the right to feel comfortable before they vote on something.
Yes, sir.
And today, they don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable, and I'm looking at the discussion here. Today, if we took a vote, it's just not going to pass, and I don't think that's what you want to have happen. So my charge to you, on behalf of this board, if they can agree with me, is what I just told you we need to have happen. No one's questioning your staff. No one's questioning your commitment. No one's questioning the work that you've done with FDOT or anyone else. But this board has to feel comfortable before they put their name out there and vote for it.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman, my whole comment was simply, was 30 days enough time
Yes.
to bring back
That
something
was
to make this comfortable. If it's not 30 days, then I think we're all open to you having enough time to bring us back something that you believe, right. Just to bring us something back in 30 days is not, I don't think it meets the, so I'm just trying to give you an opportunity that if you need more time, tell us how much time you need.
Commissioner White, I saw your hand.
Well, I agree with Mayor Lott. I'd like to hear Ms. Alden let the board know if, if 30 days is enough or if you need more time. But I think what I hear a lot of board members also asking for, myself included, is that, we all understand that we have limited resources, but we'd like to see at least a sampling of potential budget amendments whereby we would decommit funding in certain categories and enhance funding for this in order to get these metrics up to speed. I mean, that's what I'd like to see when this comes back. So I guess, to Mayor Lott's point, what's the amount of time that you feel like you need to put something together to bring back to the board?
Talk about that with staff. Thank you.
Commissioner Murray.
It's very quick. I've been listening to all this and I haven't really said much, and I do agree with all the comments here. We should never settle for less than 100%. If we are a pilot project for this, I think the message needs to go back to DOT Home Office and tell them this is just not realistic. This is not working. Our MPO board, you can send them the transcript of the conversation here. But I think the message needs to be delivered to DOT central office that this is an unrealistic approach to trying to come up with these standards of, ratings or whatever you want to call them, because they just aren't realistic. You can't, 60%, 50%, that's just not realistic. So let's just deliver the message. Maybe they'll drop the pilot project and we won't have to continue to do this.
Any other discussion? Okay, move on. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Status reports, BRT and Economic Development, Orlando Experience, Ms. Means.
Good morning. I'm Laura Mins. I'm from Orlando. Previously, I worked with the Lynx on their BRT expansion project known as Limo. And Ms. Alden had asked me to come give you a presentation on what's happened in Orlando with their BRT system. It's the city of Orlando. It's a regional map. This presentation was originally given to a BRT conference in June in LA. So a lot of people don't really know where Orlando is. They think Orlando's Disney. So obviously I am assuming that the folks here are a little more familiar with the region. And that the point is of this slide is just to focus on the fact that downtown Orlando is its own distinct place. And just the history of limo in 1983, shortly after the downtown CRA was created, the city created the meter eater. It was a 25-cent fare. We had a lot of people parking downtown on the street level parking and just leaving their cars there all day and just feeding quarters. And then these are usually people that were in the office buildings or in the employers, and they wondered why sometimes their businesses didn't flourish because there was no parking. So this was one of their they just created a shuttle bus that circulated through the downtown core. In 1984, they made it the freebie and didn't charge a fare, and it traveled up and down the corridor in the Central Business District. And then in 1989, they started planning OSCAR, which stood for the Orlando Streetcar Project. And there was a visit. Our mayor went down to Columbia and saw that they were doing this similar project, a rails-type system on a rubber-tired vehicle. And that was their aha moment, and they started designing the Limo Bus Rapid Transit Project. And in 1997, it opened, and we just celebrated our 20th year just last summer. In 2006, after having to deal with the challenge of a very compact downtown, or downtown Orlando is about 1 square mile, and it's surrounded by residential neighborhoods, single family. So in order to grow up in
up into, vertically and continue that. And we had some very narrow streets, brick streets, historic streets. We had to come up with a way to entice more economic development downtown, but at the same time manage our transportation challenges. And that was in 2006, they adopted their downtown transportation plan, which spoke to expanding the limo BRT system into an east-west and a north-south segment to get into some of those residential neighborhoods and commercial areas to the south and to the north. And around 2008, Mel Martinez, or Senator Mel Martinez, had put in an earmark for a downtown Orlando East-West Express, downtown East-West BRT. And in 2010, we applied for and were awarded a Tiger grant to fund Paramore BRT, which would be on the former Amway Arena. The Magic moved their sports arena to the south, towards South Street, and that left the Centroplex, about 60 acres of land, for redevelopment. And the BRT was going to be part of that. And the idea being that we would have transit-ready development. We'd have the transit in place first, and then development would occur. In 2016, the Paramore BRT opened. In 2014, we rebranded it to the Orange Line. Now we had different lines, so we called it the Orange Line, the Grapefruit Line, and the Lime Line. So you can mix your drinks and have margarita while you're on there. So this is the vision for the limo, is to connect hospital. We have Orlando Health in the south and Florida Hospital to the north. It was to connect neighborhoods, jobs, culture and arts, entertainment, education, sports, and connections between Sunrail and transit, bus transit, as well as BRT. And this was an effort led by the City of Orlando to meet their transportation challenges and economic development goals. So this is what limo is today. It's approximately 7, 8, 9 miles, give or take. They've done some additional expansions to the north, to North Quarter development on North Orange Avenue, has continued to develop and redevelop. And as part of some of these development goals and dollars that in order to develop these areas, they're promised some premium transit. So the city made a decision that part of their mobility fee would require that there would be premium transit. They consider premium transit to be a BRT or rail. So we expanded north to there. This is the current limo service. You can see the color-coded lines. We connect Paramore to the Central Business District now and Thornton Park. We're near Lake Eola. We closed a food desert as well. There is a Publix downtown on Lake Eola. And our project partners at Lynx, what I would tell people with Lynx is Lynx doesn't own the right-of-way, doesn't make policy decisions, and it has no money. So it's all about relationships and are the key relationships. If it weren't for the City of Orlando, there's no way that this project would have gotten off the ground. And then the other transportation projects in downtown Orlando were Sunrail, which just opened up its second phase, serving both all the way to Osceola, Poinciana, and to the north to Volusia County. There's Bike Share now, the Orlando Urban Trail, which is Gertrude's Walk, which is parallel to the Sunrail corridor, just recently expanded and opened up. We are now currently experiencing a widening of I-4 for tolling, and that project will probably be complete in 2021. And then Zipcar is also in Orlando now. So what the city did to support their BRT system and their economic development goals is, how this works is they discount impact fees for mixed use and or TOD developments around their, within a certain distance of a premium transit, which would be a BRT service or rail. They lowered impact fees in the downtown core. You already have the existing infrastructure there. What are some of these barriers to development? The Community Redevelopment Agency was established in 1980, and it established their tax increment financing district. That funds part of the limo system. Parking also funds limo. The tagline back in the day was "Park once, ride limo." So it's not a typical commuter type of transit. It is there to serve and to deal with the congestion downtown. And it provides a choice some of the places that are leasing their development provide incentives, or just at least say, hey, we're on limo. This is an attraction for our place. There's maximum and minimum parking requirements. There's an allowance for reduction in parking if you're adjacent to or you make improvements that connect to the limo BRT line. There are parking bonuses. There's reductions for proximity to transit, and there's exempt uses that don't have to come up with the parking spaces. They've also increased the height. They've doubled the density. So that's a huge incentive to developers. These are not insignificant or little carrots and sticks. These are some big carrots for developers that attract that development. And then there's pedestrian circulation requirements, and then the density intensity bonuses. So as part of the process of doing the limo expansion and using those federal funds and leveraging them in terms of the investment, we also had to track economic development activity that was occurring along those corridors. And since 2012, and that's about the time we started, we were in the economic downturn, but things have changed and have gradually started turning around. But since that time, we've had $3.4 billion in construction, 19,000 jobs, $3.6 million square feet of office, 5,000 dwelling units, 1,100 hotel rooms, and 6,000 parking spaces. So it's not that the car is going away, it's just there's other choices and opportunities for the people that live, work, and play downtown. The return on the investment is the orange line was a $20 million project in 1997, and it is the premier line. It was built, it's 100% dedicated right-of-way. And it was designed for a streetcar, so one day perhaps it could become a streetcar, but who knows. It seems like the region in Orlando has embraced the BRT, and that was an easier sell when we went to expand. The development is $3.4 billion in the 5 years from 2012 to 2017, and there's $243 invested for every dollar invested in BRT since 2012. And the actual investment from the city of Orlando was 20%. This was an 80-20 split by the federal dollars. So, and what's happened is you can see the Publix that is on the Grapefruit line. Orlando City came in after we had already started developing and we're into construction, design and construction of the east-west line, which is now the Grapefruit line. That soccer stadium wasn't even planned for or even envisioned at the time that we started. And because of the BRT line, there was no parking included in the development of the soccer stadium. There's minimal parking, but it's mostly for players and executives and people that are tied to this soccer team. And it's in Paramore, and now that this is the economic pick. The other thing with the Lime line that's done in Paramore, University of Central Florida is now putting their downtown campus on there. They're going to have about 17,000 students. They're going to have another, there's several structures, mid-rise residential developments that are coming on board. So while the ridership has not experienced what we aspired to in the beginning, that ridership will continue to grow as the area develops and intensifies and densifies. So there's 12,000 units downtown. This is 1 square mile. 95% of them are occupied, and we have about a $1,500 average rent. And there's been a 58% population increase between 2000 and 2016. There's 25,000 seat soccer stadium. We have 4 professional sports teams, including the Magic, Orlando Soccer, and the Solar Bears. We also have the women's professional soccer team, the Pride. There's about 11 million square feet of office space with 90% occupancy. We continue to see in the economic trends that multifamily is continuing to be the leader in terms of development pressure. But we do have our first office space building going up in quite some time downtown. So some of the lessons learned. Technology changes rapidly. At the time, we were going to have a kiosk with digital message signs. And then, everything is electronic, mobile ticketing. You can get everything on your phone better than you can trying to communicate with these message signs that are on the street. The construction there's been a lot of construction along the corridor. We had to remove a station because there was a high-rise going up adjacent to it. But we removed it for construction, put it back in place after it opened up. Two towers went up in the two residential towers went up adjacent to the one station in Thornton Park. Not all neighbors appreciate BRT. It's noisy, it's loud, but you live in a city, so there's that. And there was a lot of hand-holding and working, especially during construction, working with the residents in the area because it was in the neighborhood. There are development cycles, so it can go up and down. There are conflicting agendas between people in your group. Some want to, they like to see the transit. They want to see it in terms of how it can leverage dollars, but not necessarily will they use it or will they be for it or against it. There are gentrification challenges. The rents are very high. We have an affordable housing issue downtown. It's very expensive to live downtown. It's expensive to park downtown. And those are some of the challenges we have to consider. And then there's the loitering versus waiting for the bus. Is someone waiting for a bus? Are they necessarily not, are they a member of that community? Are they, so that we get a lot of pushback sometimes between some of the, who rides the bus, or business people, who are tourists, and things of that nature. We do have a homeless problem in downtown Orlando. So we have to look at different ways of holistically looking at that. And then special event challenges and service disruptions. Lake Eola is a huge venue for downtown weekend events, and we're often having to reroute the BRT, which is really not something you want to do. You want to have a permanent, the permanence of BRT is what is a selling factor, but we work around it and we get through it. And economic development is not always attributable to the transit investment. But I think what BRT does in the Orlando case is it does address their transportation challenges in the downtown core. Eventually, with the expansion north and south, I think it will start really giving people a real alternative in those neighborhoods, a way to get downtown without having to spend $100, $200 a month just on parking alone and having to sit in congestion. So. Even when you're only 3 miles from office, sometimes it can take a while. And I think that pretty much concludes it. And it's a pretty fast, brief, a lot of stuff going on in there. So.
Any questions? Commissioner Kemp, you recognized.
I just want to thank you for an excellent presentation. It's so good. And thank you, Beth, for setting this up. I feel like Orlando is doing it so right, and I would encourage everyone on this board to go over there and use the limo, the BRT at the street level in the middle of downtown. I think you said 9 miles or so, going out in 4 directions. It's really so well designed and so well done. The Sunrail also that I've been out there on, which is our, what would be the equivalent of our CSX tracks that is slowly opening up, all done in coordination and with the support of FDOT in that region, and that's not a critique. In fact, Secretary Gwynn went over with me and we did a Sunrail tour. I loved it that you had the land use types of integration here and the kinds of things that were making that work. I'd like to remind everyone that Orlando has, in the city proper, 100,000 fewer people than we have. They didn't institute any kind of tax to make what they have had happen. They have different circumstances and things like that. But this could be possible. I think this is a great vision. If we just modeled ourselves after Orlando, we'd be doing well. I feel it's unfortunate that we have in place or this plan going forward that I think is the total opposite of this. And really would be really unfortunate if we continue to go down that path that we have planned now in what we're calling BRT. I think our express bus service done by HART and PSTA could serve that purpose. And then we should be focusing on just what you're talking about in so many ways. So I applaud you. I think if to any extent that we could do exactly what you're doing, and I'm quite serious because I went out there and I would like to see Hart and I'd like to see us as a area really start to do everything Orlando's doing. It's not that far away. You can go over there, see what they're doing, and I loved hearing the land use piece because that's a piece I couldn't get from the transit people there. So that was great too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Wagner, you recognize.
You, look like it's about a 10-mile system.
Yes.
Could you give us, I know you probably don't have it now, cost on capital implementation?
The capital was, there was 20 million for the original investment, which was the first 2.5-mile line. And then we did approximately about 25 million investment on the grapefruit and the Tiger, the Paramore BRT.
The whole 10, whatever it is, don't now.
Yeah, about 40 million over 20 years.
20 years.
And the operating costs are around, right now with the 3 lines, is just a little less than 3 million per year that the city pays to Lynx to operate. Lynx is the operator, and City of Orlando pays for the operating costs. Annual ridership, I believe, is around the 75,000, 80,000. It's around 3,000 a day right now. It's not, they've had some, they have definitely had some struggles recently. Certain land uses have moved out. There were some changes in some of the land, we used to do juror parking in the Centerplex garage, which was where the limo laid over. And when those jurors no longer parked there to get to the courthouse, that took away some ridership. Actually moving the Amway Center to the south actually took away some ridership, but we've since adjusted. We definitely have some challenges on the ridership side, very similar to the rest of the country. And I would like to point out that the Orlando BRT, there are different types of BRT. The BRT that's in downtown Orlando is a circulator BRT. It is really more to serve the residences and businesses. It's not a commuter style type of BRT. So, and it's not fast. There isn't much rapid in the BRT. So those are some of the challenges you have. Lynx does have a transit master plan, a vision plan to extend to different corridors and to make better connections between some of those, the various business districts and centers that we have and serve some of those areas. We're very decentralized in the region, so that's been challenging. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Ms. McKinney.
I'm not sure I heard. What was the annual ridership?
I believe it's, the last I looked, I believe it's around 80,000 per year.
Okay, but you said 3,000 a day. That doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's there's average weekday, and I'd have to check, but I'm just trying to remember the last time I looked. Yeah, it's
It sounds low. I mean, the 80 number sounds very
80
low.
is
I
it?
mean, the Tampa streetcar has over 400,000 a year. Currently, I mean, we expect a lot more.
Yeah, you're right. I'm thinking more monthly. You're right. That is very low.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But I know snow from the daytime, so it's probably 700,000 to 800,000. Their highest they had was, I believe, in 2009, 2010 was they hit 1 million, and it has not hit 1 million since then. So there's definitely been some ridership challenges, and it's marketing. There's a lot of care and feeding that needs to take place, and some people take it for granted over time. It's just there. There's a branding issue. It looks Lynx has upgraded their buses, and they use a BRT-style buses for all of their buses. So a lot of people that come to the downtown, they don't really know that it's any different than the regular Lynx bus. So branding and marketing is very important, especially among even the new businesses. There's so much changeover in a lot of the land uses and stuff.
Commissioner Merman, you recognize.
Just a quick question. Orlando has Unigov. Their city and county are combined under one government.
They are not. Orange County is a completely separate entity.
They are.
They are. We have City of Orlando, Orange County. In fact, Lynx is funded by the 3 counties and City of Orlando.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Smart City Integrated Corridor Management, Ron Chen.
Hi again, Board. During my presentation, I gave you a little teaser about some operational strategies which can help improve travel time reliability. So I want to introduce you to Ron Shin, the District 7 Chief Traffic Ops Engineer, to discuss some of those strategies in a very interesting project which may be on the horizon.
Morning.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Good morning. Thank you for having us, board members. My name is Ron Chin, I'm Traffic Operations Engineer, and this is Joe Bugle. He's our Arterial Systems Engineer. So this morning, we wanted to share a concept with you. It's called Integrated Corridor Management. We'll also touch on a little bit about connected vehicles and also a link to smart cities. So it's driving the need for integrated corridor management. Well, our sources of congestion, 40% is associated with bottlenecks, special events, poor signal timings, bad weather, work zones, and traffic incidents. And I wanted to remind us on traffic incidents, what we're trying to do as well is to prevent secondary crashes. Over 50% of this pie chart can be assisted with integrated corridor management. And in the following slides, you'll see what is the benefits of what is corridor management and how we're going to leverage our existing assets to help us. So here's an impact statement. This is I-4. Almost 12 times a month, I-4 is shut down for a lane closure. Just imagine the paralysis. I-4 is a technology corridor. We're moving commerce from Jacksonville to Tampa. It's just huge. It's tremendous. And we need to keep people and commerce moving. The numbers speak for itself. Just recently, we completed a fog detection system on I-4 in Tampa and Lakeland. We had a very horrific crash years ago with fog. And so now that's, we call that a roadway weather information system that's integrated with the Regional Transportation Management Center. So where are we with smart cities? The department is focused on reimagining the infrastructure, and what we mean by that is we're modernizing our existing assets. We're with technology to be able to sense how much volume we're carrying, how fast we're moving people, and we can see the operations of the intersections and interchanges. We're providing a fiber network so that we can communicate to the signals, and we, the end user, can communicate with the signals themselves. We're also aware that the City of Tampa is working on mobility as a service, providing for an app that will provide you a mode choice. If you want to get to the airport from Spruce Street, should I take the bus? Should I use Uber? It's going to calculate for you the best option. And we also understand that the MPO and Qatar is working on a regional data platform, providing a uniform data source that we can all use from a region. If you talk about City of Tampa, the Department of Transportation, City of Plant City, we'll all be on a level playing field. We have a relationship today, as we speak, with TTS. So what they do, is a subsidiary of Audi, and they take data from our traffic signals and push that signal into your car if you have an onboard unit with one of those vehicles. And that is being multiplied as we speak. So why is corridor management crucial? So it engages all the stakeholders and makes a system work together, not as the DOT's operating by itself, the counties over here. So we're integrating and leveraging. If we are on I-75 and there's a crash, 2 lanes blocked on the outside, what if I was able to send a signal to the dynamic message sign saying, on State Road 60, before I get on I-75, crash ahead, use alternate route 301. And then with that notification, the traffic engineers are working with each other from the DOT to Hillsborough County saying, we need a flush pattern on US 301 to keep traffic moving. People are going to be diverting from 75 or not getting on 75 and using 301. So the essence of leveraging parallel routes, going in the same direction to help us with a better travel experience. With that, I will ask Joe Bugle to share with you some of the projects that we're working on, and perhaps get into detail on some of the actual corridors that we are programmed. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Good morning. It's my first time at the MPO, so do I state my name first? Or Joe Bugle, DOT Traffic Operations. So thank you. We're excited to be here. We're excited about some of this technology that's coming forward that we can help use to implement into our existing capacity on our infrastructure and bring it up to modern standards. And right now, currently, when the way things are operated with the transit, the freeway, arterials, some of the tolling agencies and emergency responders, we're all essentially operating on our own. We don't have a tremendous amount of coordination in terms of, minute by minute roadway operations. And right now, another major component that we don't have the ability to do is, if there's an incident on the freeway, we don't know how to measure. We don't have the capability right now to measure the impact of that incident on the arterial roadways. We know that people get off the interstate and take alternate routes. We don't know exactly how many on any given type of incident. Having the infrastructure in place with a communications platform and detection devices needed will allow us to understand what those impacts are and adjust signal timings accordingly. So this is a concept looking at our overall picture of this area and 4 key corridors that we think can operate as a unit, pairing up the interstate with adjacent arterials. So they're the obvious major corridors in this area, 75 being our north-south route, I-4 being a east-west route, and then of course the 275 segments having their arterial corridors associated with them as well. And we have identified several projects that have been prioritized already by the MPO. So this is the first corridor, which is the 275 corridor from Memorial to downtown Tampa. And we've identified these 4 or 5 arterials, it's actually 6 that if you include Del Mabry, that would be associated with an alternate route that could share capacity along this east-west segment of our town. And the way we envision it working is we would bring the arterial roadways up to modern standards with fiber optic communications, closed-circuit TVs, various detection devices that would tell us not only travel times but instantaneous volumes. And we would, have modern controllers that have capabilities for connected vehicles in the future, but also for what we call automated traffic signal performance measures. Tells us real time how many people are arriving on the green, how many people are arriving on reds, what is the coordination, how is the, it focuses our attention to the areas that are performing the poorest so that we can address those issues in real time. Then the phase 2 part of this project would be to link these arterials up with the interstate with decision support software and other traffic management center upgrades that bring all of these things together to include transit and emergency responders to have us all within a common platform. This is the 275 segment between downtown Tampa to Bears Avenue, where we envision possibly Florida Avenue and Nebraska Avenue as alternate corridors if there is an incident on 275. This segment of this corridor, of this I-75 corridor, is an interesting corridor because it is one where internally the Department of Transportation has done some coordination with Hillsborough County traffic engineers to identify this area as what we call a smart mobility network, where we can include both the county east-west roads, where you can see obviously most of the major exits are county roads and cross streets that connect 41 to 301, and I-75 are county roads, where we have the major north-south roads as the state road on 41, 301, and I-75. And if we can work together, develop a communications network, modernize this area, we feel we can add that reliability to the network. This was a Smart Cities initiative that was mentioned previously as reimagining infrastructure. And then finally, this segment of I-4, and actually this segment will go all the way into downtown Tampa, but identifies State Road, or US 92 and State Road 574, which is MLK and Hillsborough Avenue, along I-4 from Plant City all the way into downtown Tampa as part of the I-4 FRAME project, which stands for Florida's Regional Advanced Mobility Elements. You know, we love our acronyms at the DOT, but this is something that central office has prioritized. It is a federal highway initiative as well, and essentially it again modernizes these arterial networks, ties them to the interstates, and prepares them for connected vehicle technology as well as integrated corridor management technology as well. So this I-4 frame, this is sort of an overview of that particular focus area. There is already currently an I-75 frame project that would connect Orlando and Gainesville that Districts 5 and 2 are undertaking. For us, for I-4, this frame project is a natural connection between the I-4 Ultimate project that is underway right now and would include the portion that would connect all the way into the city of Tampa. But this is a technology-based program, not a capacity-based program. We have a lot of ports that could be interconnected. This area also falls within the emergency shoulder use segment. And as we mentioned, this area of I-4 is a high crash corridor that we want to provide some reliability for and reduce crashes. So that's the gist of it. That's the overview of the technology that we're looking to inject into these major corridors. And we're pretty excited about the possibilities of it. One of the other, what I think is probably the best benefit of adding all this technology, and you look at it unfolding within the smart cities, is that you have the data that is coming in real time. You have travel time and volumes that we can look at instantaneously, and when you pair that with planning organizations and smart cities groups that we have, we can easily identify as operators. We're operating the everyday system. We know exactly where the bottlenecks are. We know where the congested areas are. We know where the crashes are occurring. And when we link together with planners and designers, we can quickly come up with short-term type solutions, less than 5-year solutions to address immediate concerns, kind of condensing the traditional way of doing a PD&E study, programming a project in the work program, hoping that it gets prioritized, and then finally going to construction. We can sort of get each other together in this room, monitor the performance measures, use that data to identify exactly which areas are performing the worst. Then once a project is implemented, measure it afterwards, and you can see the benefit that is added from the, from this program. So I felt like I was talking 100 miles an hour there. I don't know if I gave anybody an opportunity to ask questions, but feel free. I know we're here at the end of the program, but
Just a little bit of information. The I-4 frame project, the department is positioned to fund that job. We also applied for a federal grant. The total is about $23 million. It would address 400 traffic signals in the Tampa Bay area. On the DOT system in Tampa Bay, we have about approximately 1,200 signals. And so it will address at least a third of those signals.
Commissioner Merwin, you recognize.
Thank you. This was excellent. And I have always said communication is the solver of all problems, even when you're not in a great situation, like people in gridlock on 75, and there's been that daily accident at Gibsonton Drive or at Big Bend. So I think just the technology and the use of it and communicating with people is really important. I thank you very much, and I hope you can get this implemented really quick.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. I have just a couple questions about the lighting, or the technology. Does this include, I know there's a lot about transit and queue jumping for buses. Will this make that possible, or is that part of this integrated technology?
yes. Yes, in fact, if we can go back real quick to this slide right here, you can see the local agency traffic management center, which is depicted by that building sort of towards the bottom there, connects to the bus. So a major component of sharing the available capacity along the corridor, because that's what you're doing. You're looking at what is your total capacity, not just what you have on the interstate or just what you have on this road here, but all the adjacent arterials with the interstate and say, all right, what capacity do I have available? And part of that capacity is your transit assets. So your transit is a major component of achieving the maximum capacity that, efficiency of that capacity. So they have to be a major player. That's part of that phase 2. When you look at some of these plans, like if you notice, I have a phase 1 and a phase 2 of these projects. The phase 2 is what brings everyone together. There's like artificial intelligence type software, decision support software that would connect the transit agencies with the emergency responders, with the local traffic management centers and us as well, sharing camera feeds, sharing detection information, sharing traffic signal information all at the same time, and it helps prioritize your decisions. And
My second question is about the dream that I have, and I think most commuters or people driving in their cars think about when they are stopped at a light and they see the road in front of them, the crossroad, empty for a very long time, and yet they're sitting in traffic. And I've wanted to know, does any of this ever include the ability to kind of read that the road is open and that, the light signaling?
yes, I would say, there's two components to address on that one. Number one is maintenance. So a lot of times if you see a roadway where traffic signal is not performing like it's supposed to, and many times you have a bad detector somewhere. A loop is not working right, the controller might be on a program that it's not supposed to be. But this system, when it connects everything together, you have the ability to identify and proactively identify
Where the source of the problem
where the
is,
source of the
and
issues.
identify to fix it.
Yes. And then second of all, the detection is the lifeblood of the system. You have to have the proper and enough detection available to be able to get the information back, to know where the problems are, to understand where your capacity is at. So that's part of what these projects do, is they add sensors, add detection devices within the infrastructure so that we have the capability of knowing where the volume is available.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Good question. Thank you very much, Mr. Bugle. Great presentation. At the port, we have 10,000 truck moves a day. And I was wondering if there's a way we can coordinate with DOT on this and try to do some type of integrated connectivity with our trucks.
At the port.
Port Authority, right. And so these are mainly going from west to east, from downtown, Hooker's Point, South County, over to Polk County and towards Orlando area.
Yes, sir. We've fielded a lot of questions over the last several months and year about connected vehicle technology and what's that mean and what's going to happen with that. And to me, the baseline, the foundation of all of it is the communications network that we're going to be putting in place with this. And to directly answer that question, I think the freight industry will be the ones who lead the charge with connected and automated vehicles. So I think you will start to see more and more automated freight vehicles on the road far before you see the mass influx of commuter vehicles that are connected or automated. And for us to be prepared for that, it requires this infrastructure, this communications network. So it's kind of a public-private type of partnership where the private agencies are developing this technology for the automated vehicles and focusing on the vehicles themselves, where we can help build the infrastructure that will make that more plausible.
I wanted to add, Port Tampa Bay is a partner with this project, I-4 Frame as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Wagner, recognized.
I'd like to thank DOT as part of our connected automated vehicle pilot project. DOT contributed about $500,000 worth of sensors as part of the signal systems to enhance how that's going to work for us. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you again. We appreciate it. Second Director's report.
Thank you. And I would like to briefly introduce Eric Hill, who's with MetroPlan Orlando and is here in the audience. Thanks for joining us today, Eric. Eric has done a lot of work with MetroPlan in building their transportation system management and operations program. So that is linking planning and operations to get better bang for the buck out of the roadway assets that they have, prioritizing those kinds of investments. MetroPlan is reached out to the MPOs on this side of the peninsula to collaborate on kind of a mega regional program to look at expanding the TISMO practice and, in fact, to focus and support this I-4 corridor effort. So it would be linking the 3 districts along the I-4 corridor with the MPOs and the local governments along the I-4 corridor. So this is all kind of new and evolving, but just really wanted to thank Eric and MetroPlan Orlando for offering to make that a possibility. I hope to work with your staffs on some kind of an I-4 corridor coalition. Our next board meeting is going to be on an unusual date, Tuesday, October the 31st. That is the week before the elections. Our next Tampa Bay Transportation Management Area Leadership Group meeting is going to be November 2nd. That one is going to be at the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority office. At this next meeting, the TMA Leadership Group has decided that they will have a rotating chair. And so that will start to take place at this next meeting. And the group will also be discussing options for creating a voting structure at the tri-county level. And then finally, I wanted to wrap up our outreach on our tri-county survey, the It's Time Tampa Bay survey, letting you know that we seem to have broken the national records for a MetroQuest platform survey with more than, I think, 9,600 survey responses. A lot of that was due to a lot of staff level outreach. So anybody who's on the MPO staff, just stand up and raise your hand for a minute, because we went out to 84 different events over the last month. There were 8,700 attendees at those events. And this has definitely been our largest survey response ever. Also, a huge thank you to the Tampa Bay Times, which donated some online impressions matching an advertising purchase that we'd made. They also donated $2,000 in print ads. Florida's largest home show provided us complimentary exhibit space over Labor Day weekend. We were out there all weekend long doing surveys. And the Beasley Media Group, which owns several radio stations in this area, really stepped up to be our partner on this. Provided 2 talk show broadcasts with Roxanne Wilder, 30-second PSAs, distributed rack cards at station events, donated the Lightning tickets that will be raffling us off. Those actually didn't come from the Lightning, they came from Beasley Media Group. And they featured us on their website and a number of social media campaigns that they did. So we had a lot of great partners, also supported by the Property Appraiser Office, which allowed us to insert into their mailers at cost. And wanted to also thank you all for your support during this outreach effort. A lot of the local government and agency staff helped get the word out about the survey. So what happens next with the survey is that we'll be summarizing the responses, who said what does it mean. We'll be back to the MPO advisory committees in November. I'd like to talk with all of you about that, and then we'll be back to the MPO board meeting in December, hopefully, with some recommendations for how we synthesize public preferences into our long-range plan update. And so we're going to wrap up today right after we adjourn by drawing the winners for those Lightning tickets. And that concludes my report.
Okay, any questions? Thank you. Is any old business? Any new business?
I'd just like to make an announcement. I'm having a community conversation next Monday night. You all have this notice at Robert Saunders Library from 6 to 7:30. Dr. Beverly Ward is a retired professor from USF with an expertise on MPOs and their history, and in particular ours in looking at this whole idea of a merger. Professor Taryn Sabia has come here before. She's a community planner and architect, and she is a great resource in this. So it's in the sunshine. Everyone from this committee, the board of county commissioners, the Tampa City Council, Temple Terrace City Council, and Plant City have been invited, and I'd just like to let you all know and invite you to participate if you are able to.
Thank you. Any other new business? Our next meeting is October 31st, am I correct? I will not be here. I'm having back surgery.
I think it's the 30th.
30th? Is it 30th or 31st?
The 30th or 31st?
It's a Tuesday.
I think that's the 30th.
It is the 30th.
30th, okay. I'm having back surgery on the 18th, so I'll be out for a while. I know Mr. Mechanic's having back surgery also. He's going to be out for a while. We didn't plan it that way, just our backs went out that way. So,
But we'll be back.
no further discussion. We're adjourned.
We came to play like our name was Miz. Now you know what it is. Hillsborough Libraries, man, as good as it gets. HC, PLC, come on. HC, PLC, come on. HC, PLC, Hillsborough, get your library card for free. HC, PLC, HC, PLC, come on. HC, PLC, come check out the local library. JFG, what's the hive? What's the hive? Well, it's live. It's a makerspace. Rated 5 out of 5. It's the place to be, man, and that ain't no jive. Want to sew? We can do that. 3D print? We can do that. Got a recording studio, so yeah, if you want to make a song, we can chop and screw that. Check out a telescope, microscope, shoot time diagram, I ain't lying, ma'am. Or a high G model with some cake pans. Ukuleles and some glows, waffle make a man. That's all, reality, yeah, check it out. Tampa Libraries, you know what we about. I think I proved that we got the clout. Now let me hear you scream it out. HC, PLC, come on. HC, PLC, come on. HC, PLC, Hillsborough, get your library card for free.
Good morning. I'd like to call the Environment Protection Commission of Hillsborough County to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation given by Chaplain Commissioner White.
Thank you. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.